Going on, everybody? So I was finally able to watch a new movie at the theaters in Sinners this last Sunday, and overall, thought it was a very good movie. Basically, the synopsis of it is a 2025 American horror film written, co-produced, and directed by Ryan Coogler, set in 1932 in the Mississippi Delta. The film stars Michael B. Jordan in dual roles as twin brothers who return to their hometown to start again, only to be confronted by a supernatural evil. And that's basically how it goes. They went to Chicago, kind of worked with Al Capone here and there, and then they left for some reason. You find out why during the course of the movie, but they just basically start a club. Basically, they call it like a juke joint, something like that. And for all like the black community to get together to hang out for that night and stuff. So that's pretty basically how it starts. You almost forget the first half an hour or so that it was a horror film because it's just basically these two brothers together trying to start up something, which is still pretty cool. But basically, it's hard to give a full review of this just because my time at the theater was so up and down when it comes to just the way the movie was presented to me, because I know I didn't splurge a little bit enough when it comes to IMAX or Dolby Digital to see this movie correctly. But the theater I was in, it was like a cheap bargain day. It was only like $7 a ticket, and I kind of got my money's worth. But I wrote like a kind of review / thoughts on Instagram, so I'll read that as my first formal-ish review and thoughts on the movie, and then hopefully at some point, I doubt I'm going to have a chance to watch it again because I wanted to watch it in IMAX, but since Thunderbolts, Marvel's new movie, is coming out, they're taking over all the IMAX slots, even though I don't think that movie was shot with IMAX. I know Sinners was basically mostly shot all of IMAX, and that's already going to be taken out, and it's only been 2 weeks, which is pretty insane. But yes, when it comes to my thoughts on Instagram, it basically read, saw this Sunday, I needed a day for it to marinate for a true review of the film. For the most part, I really enjoyed it. The acting, directing, music, story, nearly everything. Not as scary in my opinion, even though it's considered a horror film, and I'm a wimp, haha. And the story is a lot more biblical than most would think just by looking at pictures or trailers or even what the main villain is. But as of right this second, I would give it still a 9 out of 10. It should be up for a bunch of Oscars next year because of the amazing work by Coogler and his crew, like always. My local theater did let me down though, and it's partly my fault because I didn't splurge to see it in a better, more expensive format like IMAX or Dolby Digital, but I like supporting them because they have deal days, as I mentioned, but at times the lighting was so off during the movie. It was either too dark to see the screen or too bright, like a bootleg version. Y'all know that those early 2000 movies, we would get bootlegs. And then in the end, I would definitely recommend this film, especially in a theater and with a crowd. But if I can't get to the theaters again, then I'll have to wait for the 4K version to be added to my collection. That's basically how I ended it. And yes, sadly, that's how it was. I don't know if there's like a major like saturation the way he shot it and stuff, because it's very dark even during the daylight too. A lot of people's faces, a lot of characters' faces are covered with hats because obviously they're in the middle of Mississippi, so it's blaring hot, so that makes sense. But I don't know if the theater just didn't get the calibrations correct, because whenever that was the case, sometimes you were looking at a black character's face and you sometimes could just barely see their eyes almost. It was just so saturated or very dark, and at times, even when it was in the dark too, you could barely see them, or even like a white character's face who was in there, Jack O'Connell, I believe his name is. You could barely see him too, which is pretty insane for this theater. Obviously, like I said, I got what I paid for, but sadly, I probably won't be able to watch it in IMAX the way I was intended to see it. But maybe if there's like another high formatted movie theater out there that's still showing Sinners, and hopefully I would be able to get a chance to watch it. But it did make a little bit of history on its own, because they did gross like 161 million at the worldwide box office in its first 2 weeks, and it made 45 million in its second domestic weekend, which is only a 6% drop, which is pretty insane. And that's, like I said, one of the smallest drops for a major film in modern history. It could finish its run making around 300 million. It was only a production budget of like 90 million. So basically, if you make a little bit more than double, like double and a half, so it's like right around there where it's becoming profitable, and hopefully it still continues to make a lot more money so it can be one of those profitable movies. And like I said, Oscar bait and all that stuff, so hopefully it does get some love there. And then when it comes to The Bear, one of my favorite shows, it's coming back with its season 4 premiere on June 15th on Hulu. So that's around the same time it's always been premiering the past couple of years. So I'm glad they're sticking with that mode. And then when it comes to Godzilla vs. Kong 3, that movie is now filming and it will be releasing in a couple years, actually, March 26, 2027. But they did cast Sam Neill in the movie, which is pretty cool. So I know he kind of just does films that are out there in Australia/New Zealand, so maybe they're going to be filming out there, and he decided to get on the cast, so that's pretty cool, obviously, from Jurassic Park fame, so it'd be awesome to see him in that film, too. Then when it comes to, like, the Odyssey, some Universal chief executive has been saying that it's like a once-in-a-generation movie, a cinematic masterpiece that Homer himself would quite likely be proud of, and I believe the first teaser for Nolan's The Odyssey is rumored to play in front of, speak of Jurassic World Rebirth, the newer Jurassic World franchise movie coming out, I believe around July. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's only been like a couple months since they started filming and doing everything out there, so it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's only a trailer or a teaser, so it's going to most likely be less than a minute, but anything we could get from Christopher Nolan, then you got to be pretty excited about that. And then Tom DeLonge's movie Monsters of California is actually going to be streaming free on Tubi, so that's pretty cool. You also definitely go check it out. And according to Netflix, apparently they're working on a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with David Fincher to direct, that Quentin Tarantino wrote the script for. I believe it was basically kind of part of The Movie Critic, which was supposed to be Tarantino's last film, but like now he's decided to scrap that, and Pitt loved it so much that he's going to try to get, well, he basically did try to get and convince Fincher, who he's worked on Seven and Fight Club with, to help direct this movie, and it basically follows his character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Cliff Booth, and his, you know, being a porn magazine writer and all that stuff, and going through, like, I guess, different parts of the filming process behind the scenes too, because you only saw a little bit of that from his character, which I guess is why he was nominated for the supporting actor, but he was always the more interesting character in there, so that's going to be pretty cool for them to continue his story somewhat. And then when it came to, like, Warner Brothers confirming that they're developing new Gremlins and Goonies movies, it was very exciting because I'm a big fan of the Goonies. Never seen Gremlins yet. I hopefully will get a chance to watch that during the holiday season this year, but very excited about Goonies. I know they did like a 40-year anniversary together of some of the actors, and they said they heard about that. They haven't been contacted yet if they're going to be part of it, but it's still in the early process, so hopefully they can bring a lot of those characters back, whether it's cameo or part of the major roles. And then, speaking of Warner Brothers, yes, it looks like they're working on Beetlejuice 3, which is kind of interesting. I thought the second one was just okay. A lot of characters I didn't really care for. Obviously, the first one is a classic to myself and my generation, so hopefully, if they bring on somebody else other than Tim Burton to direct it, that might help it out, but, you know, it probably isn't going to get made unless he's directing, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. Then off on some miscellaneous news, yes, one of my favorite bands, New Found Glory, released a new song called 100%, and it's streaming everywhere. Obviously, when you're going through tough times, just give it 100%. Life is, you know, you're not always guaranteed a 100% path to where you're going to go. It's not always going to be easy and stuff, so take what it gives you and get through it and go through it. 100% is basically what the song says. I already love it. Only listened to it once, but it has a great riff to start off the song and just reminds me of old school New Found Glory, and it's still different. It doesn't sound like exactly the same type of song I've heard from them. It just sounds brand new and great from one of my favorite rock bands since I've liked since my early years in the early 2000s. So yeah, definitely very happy and excited. They will be coming back with a new album pretty soon. So thanks for watching, people. Like and subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what y'all think. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.